Hey guys, it's Austin Spoiler, and I'm just finished watching Batman v Superman, the movie we all have been waiting for 3 years now. It's finally come, and there is a lot to talk about with it. I wish I could talk about it all in this, but I'm keeping it spoiler free. Other than that, oh my gosh, I loved it. It's definitely in my top 3 favorite comic book movies. It was awesome. But not every movie is without sin. It's a quote, Cinema Sins. I love those guys. But anyways, so I went with my friend, and not Nightmaster, but a different one. And he was iffy about the movie, which I understand where he's coming from. But he is also a giant Marvel fanboy, and I'm a giant DC fanboy. But anyways, so he had concerns about some pacing with the movie. He really didn't like the length, and there were some things that he just was nitpicky over, in my opinion. And he didn't like the look of Doomsday, which I understand because comic book Doomsday looks really cool. But I liked Doomsday in this. I thought he was used well, though I can't go into detail about that, but he was intriguingly used. And I understand where he's coming from with the pacing. The movie, it did have slow parts, but most of the time, it reminded me of The Force Awakens, where it was like, pow, 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 one thing after another, and just kept me going. But then there were some slow parts that kind of took me out of it, and I noticed during those parts I was more laid back in the theater, while during the fast, action-packed parts, I was sitting on the edge of my seat oh my gosh, this is awesome! I loved it. I can't stop talking about it. It was amazing. I loved almost everything about it. But there was one giant thing that stood out to me that I can't get past, that I really, really don't like. I'm sad to say, but it did have to do with my favorite character of all time, Batman. Yes. But it had nothing to do with how Ben Affleck portrayed the character. I loved Batfleck. I had been on board since the beginning. But he did have there was one big thing that was done with the character that made it so he didn't feel like Batman. I'll talk about that in another video that I'll probably post sometime this weekend, but that'll be my spoiler review. But other than that, it was a great movie. I loved Ben Affleck. Can't wait to see what he does with the 3 Batman solo films he has planned. Can't wait to see him in Justice League. It's just great. But speaking of the Justice League, Wonder Woman, I loved Gal Gadot's portrayal of her. Sorry. She did an amazing job with the character. The character was well used, and it just overall felt like the comic book Wonder Woman to me. And then you have Superman, who was a lot like he was in Man of Steel, except he felt more Superman in this, more saving the innocents, keeping them out of harm's way. I liked that. Ooh, hiccup there. Ugh. But there were some parts about Superman that I didn't like, but those things that I didn't like led to other things that made me like the movie even more. And then you have the setup for Justice League, which I believe they did that wonderfully. how they included Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman. It was all done very well. And kudos to the producers and everyone involved in that film for how they used Flash. Loved it. But that's probably just because I'm a big Flash fanboy. Not as big as I am Batman, but pretty big. And speaking of Batman, I know I didn't mention this earlier, but Ben Affleck, favorite Batman yet. Though this movie does not beat out The Dark Knight, which is my favorite movie of all time. Though Ben Affleck, in my opinion, when it comes to being Batman and Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck definitely did a lot better. I liked seeing the more brutal Batman, which you see expressed in the trailers really well. And then you get to the movie, and it's just, it's nice to see this new look at Batman. I really enjoyed it. Overall, I love this movie. I understand why people wouldn't. I totally understand that. I understand why the critics aren't loving it. But I am. And if you're watching this, it's because you care about my opinion. So, I'm telling you right now, I love the movie. I'd give it probably the same that I gave for Daredevil, which is a 4.8 out of 5. It's a great film for me. I definitely suggest that you go see it as soon as possible, especially if you're a big DC fan, because it was overall just wonderful. Now, I'm going to leave you on that, and I just want to remind y'all to subscribe and like. I know it's so cliche to say that because it's like what every YouTuber does, but I really need it, seeing how I'm just starting out. But again, if you haven't watched my podcast, you haven't heard that, you should if you have any comic book questions, just put them in the comments of one of my videos. I'll take a look and then I'll answer that on the podcast. So, until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.